Commander Thelexaris stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the blue planet rotate slowly on his screen. Earth, the natives called it. A beautiful world, really. He had seen 47 emerging civilizations in his 300 years of service, and this one looked no different from the others. His scanner officer looked up from her console. "Sir, their military capabilities are confirmed. Nuclear fission weapons, chemical propulsion rockets, and some early fusion drives. Nothing that poses a real threat," Thelexaris nodded. The pattern was always the same. A young species developed spaceflight, started spreading to nearby planets, and then the Galactic Concordat arrived. Some species surrendered immediately. Others fought brief honorable battles before accepting their place in the Galactic Order. Either way, the outcome never changed. "Send the standard message," he ordered. The communication went out across all human frequencies. The Concordat was offering Earth a choice. Surrender 40% of their resources, accept limited governance, and join the galactic community peacefully, or refuse and face correction through military force. The Concordat had used this same message for 200,000 years. It worked every time. On Earth, the message caused immediate panic. Every government received the same ultimatum simultaneously. Military leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Scientists analyzed the alien ships that had appeared at the edge of their solar system. The numbers were not encouraging. The aliens had 847 ships. Earth had barely 93 vessels capable of fighting in deep space. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in the United Defense Initiative headquarters, reviewing the data for the 10th time. She was a weapons researcher, not a soldier, but the military had called her in for her expertise. The alien ships were more advanced than anything humanity had built. Their shields could withstand nuclear weapons. Their own weapons could destroy a city from orbit. "We can't win a straight fight," General Martinez said, stating what everyone already knew. "Even if we had 10 years to prepare, we couldn't match their technology." "Then we don't fight straight," Chen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Martinez asked. Chen pulled up a file on the main screen. "I've been reading their message carefully. They're offering us 90 days to decide. That means they follow rules, protocols. They gave us time because that's what they always do. So what? We use 90 days to build weapons we can't possibly finish?" "No," Chen said. "We use 90 days to learn everything about them. How they think, how they fight, what they expect." Ambassador Marcus Webb was chosen to meet with the aliens. He was a diplomat, trained in negotiation and cultural sensitivity. He stepped aboard the Concordat ship with a small team, not knowing if he would return. Thelexaris greeted them in a large conference room. The commander was tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Welcome, Ambassador Webb," Thelexaris said through a translation device. "I hope you have come to accept our terms." "I've come to understand them," Webb replied carefully. "My people need to know what we're facing. Can you tell me about the Concordat? About how you operate?" Thelexaris seemed pleased by the question. Like many victors, he was happy to explain his superiority. The Concordat represents 847 species across 12,000 systems. We have brought order to this region of the galaxy for 200,000 years. And if species refuse to join, then we engage in correction warfare. But we are not barbarians, Ambassador. We follow strict rules of engagement. Fleets meet in neutral zones. We fight in uninhabited space to avoid civilian casualties. We never use biological or chemical weapons. We never target civilian populations. When one side's fleet is reduced to 40% combat effectiveness, the war ends. The loser accepts Concordat terms. Webb listened carefully. "So you fight wars with rules?" "Of course," Thelexaris said, seeming surprised by the question. "We are civilized beings. War is sometimes necessary, but it should be conducted with honor. And these rules apply to everyone. Every species in the Concordat follows them. It is what separates us from chaos and savagery." Webb nodded slowly. "And what happens to species that don't follow your rules?" Thelexaris' expression hardened slightly. "That has never happened. When species join the Concordat, they accept our ways. It is the price of civilization." Webb thanked the commander and returned to Earth. In the emergency council meeting that followed, he delivered his report with a grave expression. "They're powerful," he said, "more powerful than we imagined. But they're also predictable. They've been fighting the same way for 200,000 years. They expect us to meet them in open space. They expect a fleet battle. They expect we'll surrender when we lose 40% of our ships. Can we use that? Chen asked. Maybe, Webb said. But there's something else. I asked Thelxeris what happens to species that don't follow the rules. He didn't understand the question. The thought had never occurred to him. Silence filled the room. They've never fought anyone who broke their rules? Martinez asked. Never, Webb confirmed. Every species they've encountered either surrendered or fought by their conventions. They don't know what to do with an enemy that fights dirty. Chen leaned forward. Then we don't fight their war. We fight ours. Over the next 90 days, Earth didn't build a bigger fleet. Instead, they built something the galaxy had never seen. Dr. Chen led a project called Prometheus, named after the human who stole fire from the gods. The project wasn't about matching Concordat technology. It was about using every lesson humanity had learned from 10,000 years of warfare. Humans knew about guerrilla tactics. They knew about asymmetric warfare. They knew about fighting enemies that were stronger, better equipped, and more numerous. They had been doing it to each other for their entire history. They built millions of small drones, each one barely bigger than a person's hand. They weren't warriors. They were weapons. Autonomous, single-minded, and cheap to produce. They built relativistic missiles, launched in secret and accelerated to nearly the speed of light. These weapons would take months to reach their targets, but when they did, nothing could stop them. They mined the space around Jupiter, placing weapons that would wait silently for approaching ships. They studied every message the Concordat sent, looking for patterns in their communications. Human computer experts worked day and night learning how to hack alien systems, and they studied history. Not alien history, but human history. Every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic, every rule broken in humanity's long and bloody past. When Vesh, the war chronicler, arrived to document the coming battle, she was confused by what she saw. Earth's fleet looked weak, damaged even. Their ships were old. Many appeared to be civilian vessels hastily armed with weapons. They're not ready, she reported to her homeworld. This will be over quickly. On the last day before the deadline, Thelxeris sent a final message to Earth. Have you made your decision? Webb appeared on the screen, looking tired but calm. We have. We choose to fight. A brave choice but foolish, Thelxeris said. Your fleet is no match for ours. Surrender now and we will be merciful. You're right, Webb said. Our fleet isn't a match for yours. We're not trying to match you, Commander. We're trying to survive. And humans have been very good at survival for a very long time. Thelxeris frowned at the strange response. I don't understand. Webb smiled, but there was no humor in it. You will. The screen went dark. The Concordat fleet began moving toward the designated neutral zone near Jupiter's orbit. They moved in perfect formation, following patterns that had been successful for 200,000 years. Dr. Chen watched from Earth Command Center. Around her, thousands of technicians worked at their stations. On the screens, she could see both fleets approaching each other. All units in position? She asked. Confirmed, came the reply. Then let's show them what humans do best, Chen said quietly. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. And we don't fight fair. The first battle was about to begin, but it wouldn't be the kind of battle the Concordat expected. It would be something new, something terrible, something human. The Concordat fleet moved into position with the precision of a well-rehearsed dance. 847 ships formed their battle formation near Jupiter's orbit. Each captain knew their role. Each ship had fought dozens of battles exactly like this one. Thelxeris watched the human fleet approach. 93 ships moving slowly and awkwardly. Several appeared to be leaking atmosphere. Their formation was sloppy. Some ships lagged behind others. It looked like Earth had sent everything they had, regardless of whether it could actually fight. They're desperate, his tactical officer observed. Half those ships won't survive the first exchange. Signal the fleet, Thelxeris ordered. We'll advance to standard combat range and offer them one final chance to surrender. 500,000 kilometers should be sufficient. The Concordat fleet began its advance. This was standard procedure. Close to proper fighting distance. Demonstrate superior numbers and firepower. Allow the enemy to surrender with honor. It had worked for 200,000 years. When the Concordat fleet reached 400,000 kilometers from the human formation, everything changed. The human ships suddenly broke formation. Not in retreat, but scattering in seemingly random directions. Some accelerated toward the concordate fleet. Others pulled away. A few spun wildly as if their pilots had lost control. "What are they doing?" the tactical officer asked, confused. Thelxeris frowned. "This wasn't in any tactical database. Perhaps their fleet discipline has broken down? These are inexperienced crews facing their first real battle." Then the first wave hit. They came from everywhere and nowhere. Millions of small objects, each barely a meter long, swarmed out of the darkness of space. They had been drifting cold and silent, invisible to scanners until they activated their drives. "Drones," someone shouted. "Unmanned combat drones." The concordate shields were designed to stop large weapons from other ships. The drones were too small, too numerous. They attached themselves to concordate hulls and detonated. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands. "This is against protocol," Thelxeris roared. "Unmanned weapons are forbidden." "They can't control these things properly." But the humans could control them. Each drone had a simple computer brain with one purpose: find a concordate ship and explode. They didn't need complex programming. They just needed targets. 3 concordate ships lost their shields under the swarm. A 4th took critical damage to its engines. "Return fire," Thelxeris ordered. "Target their command ships." The concordate weapons fired, destroying 2 human vessels immediately. But the human fleet didn't retreat or call for terms. Instead, more drones poured out of the remaining ships. Each human vessel seemed to carry thousands of them. Then the mines activated. Humans had spent months quietly placing explosives throughout the Jupiter orbital zone. Thousands of them floating silent and cold, waiting for the concordate fleet to arrive. When the fleet moved into position, they were already surrounded. Explosions rippled through the concordate formation. Ships that had survived for centuries died in seconds. The careful battle formation collapsed into chaos. "Withdraw," Thelxeris ordered. "Pull back to safe distance." But there was no safe distance. As the concordate fleet tried to retreat, the relativistic missiles arrived. Humans had launched them 3 months earlier, as soon as they received the concordate's first message. The missiles had been accelerating ever since, reaching 90% of light speed. At that velocity, they were invisible until the moment of impact. Even if the concordate scanners detected them, there was no time to react. 4 more concordate ships vanished in flashes of light as the relativistic weapons struck. The kinetic energy alone was enough to shatter hulls designed to withstand nuclear weapons. Thelxeris stared at his screens in horror. In less than 10 minutes, he had lost 173 ships. 20% of his fleet. Wars weren't supposed to happen this fast. Casualties weren't supposed to be this high. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," his communications officer said, "from all human vessels simultaneously. Put it on screen." What appeared wasn't a message. It was a history lesson. Images of human warfare played on every concordate screen. Trenches filled with poison gas. Cities destroyed by atomic fire. Guerrilla fighters ambushing superior forces. Submarines attacking from beneath the waves. Bombers striking civilian targets. Soldiers fighting building by building through ruined cities. 10,000 years of humanity's ugliest moments, compressed into 5 minutes of footage. Then Ambassador Webb's face appeared. "You wanted to know how humans fight? This is how. We don't have your technology. We don't have your numbers. But we've been fighting wars since before we had fire. We've fought each other. We've fought nature. We've fought for survival every single day of our existence. You think war has rules? War has one rule: survive. Everything else is negotiable." The transmission ended. Thelxeris tried to steady his voice.
"This is murder."
"This violates every convention of warfare." Another human ship broadcast a response. It was Dr. Chen's voice this time. "We never agreed to your conventions. You came to our home. You threatened our families. Did you think we'd line up our ships and let you destroy them fairly? Did you think we'd surrender 40% of everything we've built because you have bigger guns? You picked a fight with the wrong species, Commander." The concordate fleet tried to regroup, but human ships were everywhere now, never staying still, never following predictable patterns. They would appear, launch drones or missiles, then disappear again before the concordate could respond effectively. One concordate captain, desperate to strike back, targeted what appeared to be a human command ship. His weapons destroyed it completely. Then his own ship went dark. Human computer viruses had infected his systems the moment he fired. His shields dropped. His weapons went offline. Dead in space, his crew could only wait for rescue. They're hacking our systems, another captain reported. Every time we establish a communication link, they're breaking through our security. Thelxaris realized the horrible truth. Humans had studied the concordate signals for 3 months. They had learned the communication protocols. And now they were turning the concordate's own network against them. False orders appeared on concordate channels. Ships received commands to fire on their own allies. Navigation systems gave wrong coordinates. Chaos spread through the fleet. By the time Thelxaris managed to impose communication silence and regroup his forces, he had lost 241 ships. Over a quarter of his fleet destroyed in less than an hour. The war chronicler Vesh watched from her observation vessel, her recording devices capturing everything. She had documented 43 wars in her career. She had never seen anything like this. They're not fighting, she whispered to herself. They're slaughtering, and they're winning. Thelxaris sent an emergency transmission back to the Concordate Council. We need reinforcements. These humans fight like nothing we've encountered. They use forbidden weapons. They ignore all protocols. They target command ships, use autonomous weapons, deploy relativistic missiles that risk collateral damage across the system. They don't fight with honor. The Council's response came 12 hours later. Impossible. An emerging species cannot defeat a concordate fleet. You must have made a tactical error. We're sending additional forces, but you are ordered to suppress this rebellion immediately. Thelxaris looked at his reduced fleet. His officers were demoralized. Several captains were requesting permission to withdraw. This was unprecedented. Concordate forces didn't lose. They especially didn't lose to primitive species. But they were losing. Webb's next transmission was broadcast across the entire solar system on every channel, to all concordate forces. We didn't want this war. You brought it to us. But now that we're fighting, understand this. We're not playing by your rules. We're not fighting for honor or glory. We're fighting to survive, and humans are very, very good at survival. You can leave our system now and report that Earth is too costly to conquer, or you can stay and learn exactly how far humans will go to protect their home. Your choice, Commander. Thelxaris wanted to refuse. He wanted to crush this upstart species and restore proper order. But he looked at his casualty reports and knew the truth. For the first time in 200,000 years, the Concordate had encountered an enemy that didn't fight by the rules. And they had no idea how to respond. The first battle was over. The Concordate had retreated to regroup, but the war was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the first battle. The Concordate Council had made their decision. If one fleet wasn't enough, they would send more. Much more. 50,000 ships entered the Sol system. It was 15% of the Concordate's total military strength. Surely this overwhelming force would crush the 93 human vessels that had somehow survived the first engagement. But humanity wasn't fighting fleet battles anymore. Thelxaris stood in the emergency council chamber, trying to explain what his species was facing. The other commanders looked at him with suspicion and disappointment. You lost over 200 ships to a primitive species. Council leader Vorn said coldly. How is this possible? They don't fight like we do, Thelxaris said. They don't fight like anyone in the Concordate. They use tactics we've never seen because we've forbidden them for thousands of generations. Then we simply overpower them, Vorn replied. 50,000 ships will be sufficient. Thelxaris wanted to argue, but he had no proof that would convince them. They had to see for themselves. The massive Concordate fleet moved into the Sol system, confident in their victory. But the human fleet was nowhere to be found. The 93 ships had scattered, hidden among asteroids and in the shadows of planets. What the Concordate found instead was something worse. Human cyber weapons had been spreading through the Concordate networks for months. Every time a Concordate ship sent a message, every time they accessed their databases, the human viruses spread a little further. Now those viruses activated. Ships received orders to fire on their own allies. Navigation computers gave coordinates that led vessels into asteroid fields. Communication systems broadcast false distress calls. Life support systems reported failures that didn't exist, causing crews to abandon perfectly functional ships. The chaos was immediate and complete. Captains couldn't trust their own computers. They couldn't trust orders from their superiors. They couldn't even trust their own sensors. 300 ships were damaged or destroyed in the first week, and not a single human vessel had fired a shot. Dr. Chen watched from Earth, coordinating the cyber attacks with her team. She felt sick about what they were doing, but she pushed the feeling aside. The Concordat had come to conquer Earth. She was simply ensuring that never happened. They're adapting, one of her technicians reported, starting to shut down their networks, going to manual control. Good, Chen said. That's what we want. If they can't communicate, they can't coordinate. And if they can't coordinate, they're just 50,000 separate targets. But the cyber attacks were just the beginning. Human intelligence teams had been busy. They had studied the Concordat for months, learning everything about the coalition. They discovered something interesting. The Concordat wasn't as unified as they claimed. There were old grudges between species, trade disputes, arguments over territory and resources. The Catherine species, Thelexaris's people, had been in charge for thousands of years. Many other species resented them. Human agents began spreading information. Classified Concordat documents mysteriously appeared on networks across the galaxy. Documents showing how the Catherine took the largest share of conquered resources. How they gave their own species the best positions and territories. How they had crushed rebellions from other Concordat members. The information was real. Humans hadn't fabricated anything. They had simply made secret information public. Within weeks, 17 Concordat species were questioning why they should fight and die for Catherine expansion. Political tensions that had been buried for generations suddenly exploded into the open. Ambassador Webb appeared in broadcasts across Concordat space. Your leaders tell you this war is about bringing order and civilization to humanity. But look at your own history. How many species joined the Concordat voluntarily? How many were conquered and told they lost fairly, so they had to accept subjugation? The Concordat isn't a partnership. It's an empire. And empires always benefit those at the top. The Concordat Council tried to suppress the broadcasts, but they were too widespread. Human hackers had made sure of that. Then humanity crossed a line that shocked the galaxy. A Catherine military staging area was hit by a biological weapon. It wasn't lethal. Instead, it caused temporary sterility among the Catherine population. Soldiers found themselves unable to reproduce for approximately 1 year. The galaxy erupted in outrage. Biological weapons had been forbidden for 200,000 years. Species that had been neutral in the conflict now condemned humanity. This is genocide, the Concordat Council declared. This proves humans are monsters. Dr. Chen appeared in a broadcast response. She looked tired, and there was genuine pain in her eyes. Yes, we used a biological weapon. And yes, it was terrible. But let me be clear about what we did. We created a weapon that stops our enemy from replacing their casualties. It's temporary. It's not lethal. And it's a direct response to an invasion of our homeworld. You want to conquer us? Fine. But you're going to pay a price that makes conquest too expensive to be worth it. Every species in the galaxy needs to understand. Attacking humanity has consequences. Real consequences, not honorable battle consequences, the broadcast continued. We're not proud of what we're doing, but we're going to survive. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, so be it. Better to be living monsters than dead, honorable beings. Thelexaris watched the broadcast from his ship. He understood, perhaps better than anyone else in the Concordat, what Chen was really saying. Humans weren't trying to be evil. They were trying to make the cost of conquest too high to justify, but the galaxy didn't see it that way. They saw a dangerous species that would use any weapon, break any rule, commit any act to win. 17 younger Concordat species saw something else. They saw humans winning against impossible odds, and they started to wonder, what if we fought like that? A secret communication reached Earth. It came from the Talvek, a species that had been conquered by the Catherine 3,000 years earlier. They had accepted their defeat because the Concordat said it was fair. But now they were having doubts. Teach us, the message said. Teach us to fight like you. Help us break free from the Catherine. Webb brought the message to Chen and the military council. This is it. This is where we decide what kind of species we are. Do we help them? Do we export our way of war to the rest of the galaxy? General Martinez spoke first. If we don't help them, the Catherine will crush us eventually. They have too many resources. But if we help these other species, we turn this into a civil war. The Concordat will tear itself apart. Chen closed her eyes. And we'll be responsible for spreading our methods across the galaxy. Every war from now on will be like ours. Total, brutal, without rules. Maybe that's better than the alternative, Webb said quietly. The Concordat's rules weren't moral. They were just a way to make subjugation seem fair. Better honest war than dishonest peace, the decision was made. Humanity would help the younger concordate species. Not with weapons or ships, but with knowledge. Human military advisors began teaching special operations, intelligence gathering, guerrilla warfare, and propaganda techniques. The galaxy was about to change forever. 6 months into the war, the Concordate was fighting on 2 fronts. The Catherine military was trying to suppress both humanity and growing rebellions within their own coalition. Ships were stretched thin. Resources were depleting faster than expected. Thelexaris found himself commanding forces against rebel Concordate species who were using human tactics. He watched in horror as his own people adopted the methods he had once found reprehensible. Catherine ships started targeting rebel civilian infrastructure, breaking their own rules. "We're becoming like them," he said to his second-in-command. "We have to," came the reply. "Otherwise we lose." That's when Thelexaris understood the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't corrupted the galaxy. They had simply shown everyone what war really was. The Concordate had hidden war's true nature behind rules and honor, but the ugliness had always been there. A massive battle occurred near a major Concordate trade station. Catherine forces fought rebel species using human tactics. The station was destroyed. 15 million civilians died in the crossfire. It was the first mass civilian casualty event in 50,000 years. The galaxy turned to Earth in horror and accusation. Humanity's methods had led to this, but Webb's response silenced many critics. A civilian station was destroyed because the Catherine and the rebels were fighting there. Both sides chose that battlefield. Both sides share responsibility. We didn't cause that tragedy. We didn't fire those shots. What we did was show the galaxy that your way of war wasn't peaceful. It was just slow conquest with better public relations. Now everyone sees it clearly. The message was harsh but true. The Concordate civilized warfare had allowed them to conquer and subjugate for 200,000 years. Species had accepted defeat because they lost fairly, but there was nothing fair about it. There never had been. The war had become something bigger than Earth's survival. It had become a revolution, and like all revolutions, it was messy, brutal, and unstoppable. 1 year into the war, the Galactic Concordate was breaking apart. What had started as a simple conquest of Earth had turned into a civil war that threatened to destroy 200,000 years of established order. 17 species had formed what they called the New Compact. They wanted to restructure the galaxy on different principles, not subjugation through honorable defeat, but genuine partnership and mutual defense, and they wanted humanity's help to achieve it. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in a meeting with representatives from 6 different species. They had come to Earth secretly, traveling in civilian ships to avoid detection. They looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. "We need your military advisors," said Ambassador Krell of the Talvek. "The Catherine are crushing our rebellions. They're using tactics learned from fighting you, but we're still fighting the old way. We're losing." Chen felt the weight of the decision. "If we teach you our methods, you'll use them against the Catherine. More people will die. The galaxy will become more violent, not less." "The galaxy is already violent," Krell replied. "The Concordate just hid it behind rules. They conquered my people 3,000 years ago. We've been subjects ever since. They take our resources, our best minds, our freedom. Is that less violent than an honest war?" Chen had no good answer to that. The training began. Human special operations soldiers taught alien soldiers how to conduct raids, sabotage, and intelligence gathering. Human computer experts taught cyber warfare. Human strategists taught how to fight enemies with superior numbers and technology. The students were horrified and eager in equal measure. Everything humans taught contradicted thousands of years of military doctrine. But it worked. New compact forces started winning battles they should have lost. Ambassador Marcus Webb found himself in an unexpected role. He had become the diplomatic leader of the new compact, coordinating between species that had been enemies or rivals for generations. The Catherine maintained order by keeping everyone else divided, Webb explained in a new compact assembly. They played species against each other, gave out rewards and punishments based on loyalty. "We're offering something different. Real equality, real partnership. But it won't be easy and it won't be clean." Not everyone in the new compact agreed with human methods. Some species were uncomfortable with the brutal tactics. Others embraced them too enthusiastically, seeing them as license for revenge against old enemies. Webb spent his days trying to hold the coalition together, while preventing it from becoming as oppressive as the old Concordat. Meanwhile, Thelxeris found himself on the other side of that conflict. He commanded Catherine forces fighting the rebellion, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. He had spent his entire career believing the Concordat represented order and civilization. Now he watched his own people commit atrocities in the name of preserving that order. During one battle, Catherine forces destroyed a rebel supply depot. Intelligence said it was purely military. After the attack, they learned it was also a civilian shelter. 3,000 families died. The commander who ordered the strike was promoted. Acceptable casualties, the Catherine High Command ruled. Thelxeris protested. We killed civilians. We broke our own laws. The laws don't apply when fighting terrorists, came the reply. These rebels use human tactics. We must adapt. That's when Thelxeris realized his people had become exactly what they accused humans of being. The difference was that humans had always been honest about what they were. The Catherine were lying to themselves. He requested a secret meeting with Dr. Chen. They met on a neutral station, both taking enormous risks. If anyone discovered their meeting, Thelxeris would be executed as a traitor. Chen would be condemned as a collaborator. They sat across from each other in a small private room. Why did you ask for this meeting? Chen asked. Thelxeris looked tired. He had aged significantly in the past year. I need to understand. Why do humans fight this way? Without honor, without rules? Chen considered her answer carefully. Because we had to. For 10,000 years, humans fought each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. We learned that survival matters more than honor, that rules are useless if you're dead. But at what cost? Thelxeris asked. You've turned the galaxy into a place where any tactic, any weapon, any horror is acceptable if it leads to victory. No, Chen said firmly. What we've done is remove the illusion. Your Concordat fought wars for 200,000 years. You conquered species, took their resources, subjugated their people, but you called it honorable so everyone accepted it. We showed the galaxy that war is always terrible. You can have rules or you can have honesty, but you can't have both. Thelxeris stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. My people are committing atrocities now, killing civilians, using forbidden weapons. They say it's because we're fighting terrorists, but I know the truth. We're scared. For the first time in 200,000 years, we might actually lose. Then end the war, Chen said. Negotiate. Accept that the galaxy is changing. The Catherine High Command will never accept that. They'd rather destroy everything than admit they were wrong. Chen stood as well. Then the question is, what will you do? Thelxeris didn't answer. He left the meeting without another word. 3 weeks later, something unexpected happened. The new compact received a message containing complete Catherine fleet deployment codes, communication protocols, and strategic plans. The source was anonymous, but the intelligence was genuine. Someone high in the Catherine military had turned traitor. Webb looked at the data with mixed feelings. This could end the war. With this information, we could strike at their most vulnerable points. But using it feels wrong. Why? Asked General Martinez. The Catherine have been trying to destroy us for a year. Someone on their side finally saw reason and helped us. We should use every advantage we have. Because whoever sent this betrayed their own species, Webb said. If we win using this information, we'll have won through treachery, not strength. Martinez shook his head. You're thinking like the Concordat. They care about how they win. We care about surviving. Use the intelligence, Webb made the decision. The new compact forces launched a series of coordinated strikes, hitting Catherine supply lines, command centers, and strategic positions. The Catherine military reeled under the assault, but then the Catherine High Command made a desperate decision. If they couldn't win through conventional means, they would escalate beyond anything seen in 200,000 years. They activated planet-killing weapons that had been forbidden since before most species achieved spaceflight, massive devices that could crack a world's crust and render it uninhabitable. The target was Earth. The Catherine sent 300 ships on a suicide mission. Their objective was to reach Earth and deploy the planet killers. If humanity had shown the galaxy how to fight without rules, the Catherine would show the cost of that choice. When the attack force was detected, humanity had 72 hours before the ships reached Earth. Long enough to evacuate some people, but not 8 billion. Most of humanity would die. Dr. Chen stood in the command center watching the Catherine fleet approach. Around her, people worked frantically to coordinate evacuation ships, but everyone knew it was hopeless. "We can't save everyone," Martinez said quietly. "Maybe 10 million if we're lucky." Chen looked at the tactical display. The Catherine fleet was heavily defended. Even if Earth threw every ship at them, they probably couldn't stop all 300 vessels. Then a message came through on the command channel. It was Thelxeris. "Dr. Chen, I know you're watching the Catherine attack force. I'm sending you updated fleet movements and defensive protocols. Use them. Stop this madness." Chen stared at the incoming data. "This is treason against his own people." "He's trying to save both our species," Webb said, appearing on screen from the new compact headquarters. "The Catherine will destroy themselves if they destroy Earth. Every species will see them as monsters. The Concordat will collapse. He knows that." Chen made a decision. "Send our fleet. Tell the new compact we need every ship they can spare. We're going to stop that attack force, and we're going to do it without destroying Earth in the process." The battle that followed would become known as the Battle of Sol. It lasted 18 hours. The Catherine fought with the desperation of those who knew they were losing everything. The human and new compact forces fought with the desperation of those protecting their homes. Thelxeris' intelligence made the difference. New compact forces hit Catherine weak points with precision. Human ships used every dirty trick they had learned. The battle was brutal and chaotic, nothing like the organized warfare the Concordat had practiced for millennia. In the end, the Catherine attack was stopped. But the cost was enormous. Thousands of ships destroyed, millions of casualties across all sides, and 12% of Earth's orbital infrastructure was damaged in the fighting. The Catherine High Command was overthrown by their own military. Moderate Catherine forces, led by officers who were tired of the war, seized control. The war was over. But the galaxy would never be the same. The Treaty of Geneva was signed 6 months after the Battle of Sol. The name was chosen deliberately. Geneva on Earth, where humanity had once tried to create rules for war. Now they were helping create new rules for the galaxy. But these rules were different from the Concordat's conventions. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood before the assembly of 700 species. Some had fought with the new compact. Some had remained loyal to the Catherine. Many had stayed neutral, watching to see who would win. The old Concordat enforced order through power disguised as honor. Webb said, "Species were conquered, then told they lost fairly. They accepted subjugation because the alternative seemed worse. We're proposing something different. No one can force warfare rules on anyone else. Each species defends itself however it chooses. But there will be consequences for actions. War crimes will be defined not by method, but by intent and proportionality." The Catherine representative stood. His name was Velsharn, one of the moderate officers who had helped overthrow the High Command. "What about biological weapons? What about targeting civilians? Are there no limits?" Dr. Sarah Chen stood to answer. "There are limits, but they're based on outcomes, not methods. If you use a weapon that causes unnecessary suffering, you'll answer for it. If you target civilians without military justification, you'll answer for it. The Galactic Court will judge based on whether actions were proportional to threats faced." "Who decides proportionality?" Velsharn asked. "Everyone," Chen replied. "The court will have representatives from 200 species rotating every 5 years. Humans won't have special authority. Neither will Catherine. Every species gets an equal voice." The debate lasted 3 weeks. Some species wanted harsher penalties. Others wanted clearer definitions. Many were simply trying to understand this new way of thinking about warfare and peace. In the end, the treaty passed. Not because everyone agreed, but because everyone was exhausted. The war had cost 4.7 billion lives across all species. No one wanted to continue fighting. 3 species refused to sign. They left the galaxy entirely, unwilling to live in what they called a human-contaminated universe. Their departure was mourned by some, celebrated by others. The Concordat formally dissolved. In its place emerged smaller regional federations based on mutual cooperation rather than conquest. The Catherine kept their homeworld and nearby systems, but they no longer ruled an empire. Dr. Chen was appointed the first Chief Justice of the Galactic Court. She accepted reluctantly, knowing the position would make her a target for those who hated what humanity represented. Her first major ruling came 3 months after taking office. A dispute between two species over resource rights had turned violent. Both sides claimed the other started it. Both wanted the court to rule in their favor. Chen reviewed the evidence carefully. Then she issued her judgment. Both sides are guilty of escalating unnecessarily. Both used violence when diplomacy was still possible. Both will pay reparations to the other. And both will send representatives to mediation training so they learn to resolve conflicts before they become violent. Neither side was happy, but they accepted the ruling. That set the pattern for Chen's tenure. She didn't try to make everyone happy. She tried to be fair, to hold all species to the same standards and to prioritize peace without pretending war could be eliminated entirely. War without rules is chaos, she said in a famous address. War with rules is oppression. War is last resort with accountability after. That's civilization, not perfect but better than what came before. Ambassador Webb took a different path. He became the Secretary General of the new compact, working to build cooperation between species that had been enemies for generations. It was exhausting work. Old prejudices didn't disappear just because a treaty was signed. He married a Catherine diplomat named Shalvin. The wedding was broadcast across the galaxy. Some saw it as a beautiful symbol of reconciliation. Others saw it as betrayal of both species. Webb and Shalvin ignored the critics and focused on building a life together. Their union produced no children. Human and Catherine biology were incompatible, but they adopted orphans from 4 different species who had lost parents in the war. Their family became a symbol of the new galaxy, messy and complicated and genuinely trying. Commander Thelxaris never returned to the Catherine homeworld. He was branded a traitor by hardliners, despite moderate Catherine leadership declaring him a hero who prevented genocide. His own safety required him to live somewhere unexpected. He chose Earth. Chen helped arrange asylum for him. He settled in a quiet region, far from major cities. But he didn't retire. He taught at military academies, sharing his experiences with young officers from dozens of species. His course was called Understanding Your Enemy. Students learned how the Concordate's assumptions had blinded them to alternatives. They learned how humans had studied Concordate weaknesses and exploited them. Most importantly, they learned to question their own assumptions. The greatest military failure is believing your enemy thinks like you do. Thelxaris would tell his classes. Humans didn't think like us. We couldn't understand them. That's why we lost. In his final years, Thelxaris wrote a book. He called it The Death of Honor, a Catherine Perspective on the Human War. The book was controversial. Some praised it as honest reflection. Others condemned it as defeatist. One passage became particularly famous. We believed war could be civilized through rules. Humans showed us that civilized war is simply slow conquest with good publicity. They forced us to confront an ugly truth. War is always horrible. The choice isn't between honorable war and dishonorable war. It's between honest horror and dishonest horror. Perhaps honesty, even brutal honesty, is more moral than comfortable lies. Vesh, the war chronicler, completed her documentation of the conflict. Her massive work ran to 15 volumes and included footage, interviews, and analysis from all sides. She titled it, They Anticipated Guns and Ships. They Got a Species That Redefined War. The documentation became required study in schools across the galaxy. Teachers used it to show young people the cost of war, the complexity of conflict, and the importance of questioning authority. Vesh's conclusion was studied by scholars for generations. Humans didn't teach the galaxy cruelty. Every species already knew cruelty. Humans taught the galaxy honesty about what war is. They stripped away the pretense, the honor, the rules that made conquest acceptable. In doing so, they made war so horrible that species think twice before starting one. Perhaps that's the ultimate victory. Not winning the war, but making future wars less likely. 50 years after the war ended, a new generation had grown up in the changed galaxy. Young humans served alongside young Catherine in integrated defense forces. They weren't friends exactly, cultural differences remained, but they were colleagues. They protected common interests. Warfare doctrine had evolved into something hybrid. The best elements of concordate honor combined with human pragmatism. Rules existed, but they were flexible based on circumstances. Accountability was enforced, but methods were left to individual choice. 3 new conflicts occurred in those 50 years. All three ended through negotiation rather than military victory. Not because everyone suddenly became peaceful, but because no one wanted to risk another war like the one with humanity. The cost was too high. The uncertainty too great. Dr. Chen, now elderly, stood at Thelxeris's grave. He had died at age 387, old even for a Catherine. His epitaph read, "I was taught honor meant following rules. I learned honor meant choosing right." Chen placed 2 bouquets on the grave. One was earth flowers, roses, because Thelxeris had learned to appreciate them. The other was Catherine memory blooms, which only grew on the Catherine homeworld and were given to honor the dead. A group of young people approached her. Mixed species, humans, Catherine, Telvek, and others. They were students at the military academy where Thelxeris had taught. "Chief Justice Chen," their leader asked, "could we ask you a question?" "Of course," Chen said. "How do we prevent another war like yours? The one between humanity and the Concordate? We've studied it, but we don't want to repeat it." Chen looked at the young faces so earnest and worried. They had grown up in a galaxy shaped by the war but hadn't experienced it themselves. That was good. Each generation that didn't experience war directly was a victory. "You don't prevent it," she said finally. "You can't promise war will never happen. What you can do is remember what it cost. Remember the billions who died. Remember the species that left the galaxy rather than adapt. Remember the choice everyone faced, change or die." She gestured to Thelxeris's grave. "This Catherine commander betrayed his own people to prevent genocide. He saved both our species by doing the hardest thing imaginable. That's what you remember. That's what you teach. War without rules is hell, but rules without the will to break them when necessary, that's just slavery with better manners." The students looked confused. One brave girl asked, "So what's the answer?" "Rules or no rules?" Chen smiled sadly. "The answer is hard choices. The answer is being willing to do terrible things, but having the wisdom to know when terrible things are necessary and when they're just cruelty. The galaxy walks that edge now. That's our legacy and our warning." She turned back to the grave.